Climbing Gold is a production of Duct Tape and Beer, with support from The North Face, Never Stop Exploring, Chorus, Performance Sports Technology, and Element, restoring health through hydration.
If you want to get faster at speed climbing, you have to go straighter. You have to go in more of a straight line from the start to the finish. And you have to whittle away as much of the zigzagging as possible. So it's just straight line.
Here is producer John Bergman.
And I think the way that climbers have figured out how to do that is to skip certain holds and to go more direct, right? I mean, if anything, it's kind of in line with a lot of the traditional climbing ethos of just like, oh, let's do this route direct, right? Let's find the direct path to this hold. It's kind of what speed climbing's doing. Think back to the pandemic, right? There were no competitions. Most climbing gyms were closed, and a lot of outdoor climbing areas were closed also. We were really desperate for just like, if you didn't have a home wall, you were kind of just like really desperate for climbing content. And I think what happened to a lot of us is we just kind of dove into like social media, right? Like scrolling, I want to see some cool climbing stuff happening, or maybe it was like watching old World Cups or whatever. We start seeing these videos of the Indonesian team training, right? Not high quality videos or anything, and they're not even in high quality facilities, but they are so fast. Like they're crushing it. I mean, they're like matching or breaking world records just in training, like casually. This is just like on social. So these videos among comp fans kind of sort of go viral. There just develops this buzz. And I remember the phrase among comp...
How many speed climbing comp fans were there?
Hey, I was one. I was included. I don't know. Maybe it was just like me and like two other people. I don't know. But like, I do remember there was this phrase that developed. It was like, the Indonesians are coming, right? Meaning when the comps open back up and the world opens back up, something wild is going to happen because these guys are so freaking fast in these videos. So fast forward to 2021, May 2021. It's the qualification round at the Salt Lake City World Cup. And I think it was in the morning. So I remember I took a seat on one of the plastic chairs several rows back from the speed wall. And it was getting ready to start. And I remember like looking around and there's like nobody next to me. And there's nobody in front of me in the row of chairs in front of me. So I was like, I'll move up, and I'll move up. And if somebody tells me, whatever, to move back, I'll move back. So I moved up one row, still nobody's around. I like look around, there's an empty row in front of me. So I was like, I'll move up a little more. So I'm just like moving up one row at a time. Eventually I get like really close. I don't know if I was in the front row, but I was really close. And Albert Oak, who at the time was doing YouTube videos about climbing and about speed climbing. Now he's a coach. And I remember we were talking with each other and we were like, this is crazy. We were looking around. We're like, there's nobody here. And a world record is going to get set. There was just this like buzz. We just knew it was going to happen. And sure enough, Kiramal lines up for his race. Kiramal Katibin. His time is 5.25. And there were not many people there, but the people that were there, it was so loud. It was awesome because everybody was cheering. The world record up till then was 5.48. Kiramal runs 5.25, which is like 0.23 difference in speed climbing. That's not just breaking a record. That's like smashing it. That's demolishing the world record. It was just a magic moment. And one of the few instances in climbing where you can kind of predict the future. We just knew, like, history's going to get made right here. And sure enough, it was.
Just hours after Kiramal breaks the world record, ending a 5-year drought of the new fastest times, his teammate, Federic Leonardo, breaks the record again during the finals.
Come on, boys, show us what you got. We're moving as fast as lightning in the close race.
And it's just like, oh, well, we just witnessed another world record. And I think that it was really the fact that it wasn't just that Kiramal set the world record. It was that Federic, his teammate, broke it so quickly after that. I think that's kind of when we realized, oh, this is a new era of speed climbing. We're in for some fireworks for probably several seasons. It's really just been an incredible, special handful of seasons here.
Right now, speed climbing is having a moment, even if you don't know it is. Records are falling, beta is being broken, talent is moving into the sport. It's barely recognizable when compared to other forms of climbing, but behind each heat, each podium, each medal, there is a deeper shared effort, one that defines not just speed climbing, but our sport as a whole, a simple governing ethos. The way to push our sport is to do more with less. That's what guides it. Everything. All of climbing. That's not always comfortable. It's certainly not always safe, but it is the way. The games in Paris are in full swing, and speed climbing is its fastest sport. So far, in the opening days, as I record this, we've seen both men's and women's world records fall. America's Sam Watson and Polish climbers Alexandra Miroslav each breaking their own records. Alex, right now, he's on a flight to Paris where he'll be checking in. Over the last few months, though, we've been able to sit down and talk with some of the athletes leading the way about the ongoing quest to take the standardized speed route to the fastest humanly possible time. In the first part of Vertical Drag Racing, we covered the beginnings of competitive speed climbing. Today, we break down the sport's current golden age. This is part 2 of Vertical Drag Racing. This is Climbing Gold.
My name is Samuel Watson, and I am a speed climber for Team USA, and I will be going to the Paris 2024 Olympics.
My name is Piper Kelly. I'm a professional speed climber, currently living in Salt Lake City, Utah, while I train for the Paris Olympics.
I'm Emma Hunt. I'm a speed climber for Team USA.
I live in Texas, so there's not climbing for at least a couple hours.
I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, so a new gym opened up that I moved over to join their youth team. They just happened to have a speed wall.
When I joined the Stone Summit climbing team, they built the Kennesaw facility. When I joined that team, they had a big speed team already, and I never tried it before, and I was just kind of always drawn to it.
So I was just really focused on getting my times down on the speed wall, and I really enjoyed that process, and I had a lot of really good people around me that were also pretty psyched on that. So I got my times down, and I started competing in 2021, and I've just moved up through the circuit since then.
A big reason why I liked it when I was young is there just happened to be a girl who was 5 or 6 years older than me on my youth team. And she was speed national champion, speed, national record holder. And I was just, 12-year-old girl and thought she was the coolest thing ever. You can measure your progress, really. I mean, it's a number at the top of the wall. It shows you if you're getting better, if you're getting worse, if you're staying the same. And I think that just, for me, it makes it really, really motivating. I'm really competitive. So being able to try to beat a specific number really kind of works with my competitive side.
I just loved trying to go fast, and I was not good when I started, but no one told me I was bad, and I didn't think I was bad. But looking back, I was running 18s, and I was like, that is amazing.
How many times do you think you've done the official speed route now?
This year?
I'm at 1,080 or something.
I think about 1,600.
How many times do you think you've done the speed route in your entire career?
I've been thinking maybe around 30,000 times.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
What's the, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, somewhere between 20. I know I sort of did some math, and I know I passed 10,000 back in 2019. So that was about 6 years. So now, about 6 years later, probably between 20 and 30,000 times.
So every athlete needs to burn this route into their mind so that it becomes like walking or running or the backstroke. The question then becomes not, can I do this, but it becomes, how fast can I execute? Simultaneously, however, there's also been this rapid refinement of how you solve the puzzle of this given set of holds. What is the fastest executable path upward? And every year, it seems like competitors have been figuring out a better solution. That means the rest of the field needs to all of a sudden relearn all those tiny muscle movements and onboard the new code into their minds and body. The first big leap happened in 2017 when Reza Alipour skipped the fourth hold to break the world record. In 2018, it was announced that climbing is going to be included in Tokyo, and a bunch of new talent comes into the discipline.
Tomoa Narasaki comes along.
So Ray Sugimoto drop it here. Tomoa holds on to it though. He's got the left heel hook. He's worked his way up the left-hand side of the volume. Are we about to see the flash from Tomoa Narasaki?
Wouldn't be doing speed climbing if it wasn't for the fact that at the Tokyo Olympics, speed is included in the 3-event combined discipline, along with bouldering and lead climbing. And Tomoa Narasaki, one of the best boulders in the world, also very proficient at lead climbing. If he wants to get into the Olympics, he's got to start speed climbing. So he comes up with this idea. If you can envision the speed route, at the very bottom, there are like the first three little foothold nuggets. They kind of go out at like a 45-degree angle. Tomoa comes up with this idea to skip the farthest foothold, the farthest of those three nuggets. And instead of going to that third foothold, he brings a foot up to the third handhold. So in the process, what he's doing on the third handhold is he's kind of doing a big step up to that hold, so he has a hand-foot match on the third handhold. And then from that third hold, he just is able to do kind of like a step-up dyno and launch way up. And it sounds pretty complicated when we try to talk about it here without looking at a map. But what it equates to is essentially a straight shot from the start up to the kind of the next section of the route. And so that's the Tomoa skip.
Tomoa debuted it on a run where he actually slipped and didn't even win his heat, but it turned heads because it's so difficult to switch and so much practice is required. The field slowly began to incorporate the new beta. First the men, and then the women.
When's the last time you changed your beta on the speed route?
I actually switched to the Tomoa. I had still been doing the traditional start. Only like 2 of the moves I do are the same as the moves that I did like a year ago. So I went from never having changed anything in 8 years to like pretty much everything is different now.
And so like this year, I switched to the Tomoa skip. Last year, it was the Indonesian top. The year before that, it was the one-arm dyno. And then before that, it was I did like standard beta and making kind of subtle tweaks.
Then the Indonesian team emerged from the pandemic lockdown with the Indonesian top. The Chinese team added their own refinement in 2019. It was known as the Chinese top, but it was slower to enter the field, probably because it's wicked difficult. Sam Watson thinks that to do that move is V11 after you've already sprinted 30 feet upwards. Pretty crazy.
It just a skip at the top, and what's called the Chinese beta has several variations. The skip variation is the hardest. I just pull in with my right arm because it's a tiny bit faster and I'm also taller. And then the top section is just climbing the left side of the route, and then you make a dyno to the buzzer and try to hit the buzzer as low as possible.
The harder the beta, the riskier it is. So athletes need to execute, even if they know the way. That's what will distinguish everybody. So these advancements, they happen, but they take time to trickle through the field. And that time is right now.
But it is interesting to think that it took Tomoa, a boulderer, to come up with that, because he is coming from this school of like parkour movement, right? So this idea of getting your feet as high as possible and looking for like step up dynos, like that's his MO because he's a boulderer, right? And you have to wonder if a very dynamic boulderer had not been trying speed climbing around that time in the lead up to the Tokyo Olympics, would this have even happened, and would the evolution have taken place so quickly? I don't know. It's like Happy Gilmore, right? I mean, I haven't seen that movie in, 25 years or whatever, but like it takes a hockey player to come into golf to like revolutionize the sport. But it's so easy to get set in your ways. And so there is benefit for a total outsider coming into this and in that case saying like, why don't we just do it this way? Why don't we skip this hold and just do a step up dyno?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see something else like that again in the future, though. Like if somebody boulders V13, V14 consistently, can you do it totally differently? And if so, does then that just raise the standard for speed climbers, where it's like, oh, well, now they all have to be really, really strong to do the way that's the most, I mean, kind of in the way that Tomo skip. It's like kind of a tricky move that nobody was doing until it becomes the norm, and then everybody learns how to do it because you're like, well, that's the new normal. We'll be back with more after the break. Climbing Gold is brought to you by the North Face. I've been a North Face athlete for almost 18 years, and this summer you can join me and the North Face for a celebration of climbing, culture, and community at ClimbFest. We're sending it big in the Big Apple at the Brooklyn Bridge Park on August 23rd and 24th. Watch her compete in an epic competition that sees athletes race to the top of a 55-foot wall over the water. On the ground, we've got DJ sets, food, exclusive merch, freestanding boulders to climb, and panel discussions led by my fellow North Face athletes and me. Whether you're happiest on the wall or the ground, don't miss the climbing event of the summer. Visit www.thenorthface.com and check out their event section for more info. Or check out our show notes for the link. Hope to see you there. Element is a zero-sugar electrolyte drink mix formulated with a science-backed ratio of sodium to potassium to magnesium. Each packet delivers a meaningful dose of electrolytes free of sugar, artificial colors, or other dodgy ingredients. It tastes great, and I've used it extensively on expeditions. And my 2-year-old loves it and calls it sprinkle water. Element is formulated for anyone looking to restore health through hydration and is perfectly suited for athletes, folks who are fasting, or those who follow keto, low-carb, whole food, or paleo diets. Try Element totally risk-free. If you don't like it, they'll refund your order, no questions asked. Get your free sample pack with any Element purchase at drinkelement.com/climbinggold. Be sure to try the new Element Sparkling, a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. That's drinklmnt.com/climbinggold.
The gym I train at, it's the only 15 meter speed wall in Georgia.
This is climbing speed Olympian Emma Hunt.
There's a other one that's 10 meters that's like as old as speed climbing itself. The quality of walls is varying. Like cities they might have a speed wall, but it might have the wrong generation of holds, or it might be the wrong texture, or T-nuts might be off. And so like actual standardized walls, I don't think there's that many, but like it is growing that gyms do have it now. Mm-hmm. But they also are setting other climbs on top of it. So it's like not good if you actually like want to train speed, or they'll only have like one speed lineup, so then you couldn't race anybody.
The reality is speed climbing has taken a back seat to the more popular and mainstream events of sport climbing and bouldering in the U.S. But the exact opposite is true for other nations that are outside of the climbing powerhouses like U.S. and Western Europe.
Speed climbing is massive in the developing world, comparatively.
Here's IFSC commentator Matt Groom.
Because you don't need a lot to do it. You need a wall that isn't set, so you don't need setters. You need very little equipment. Like I was talking to a friend of mine who has come from Venezuela. He's now on the Spanish team. But he was saying that like for kids, it's probably as expensive as football to do. You need a pair of football boots, you need kit. Speed climbing, you need shoes and you need a harness and a wall somewhere. So it's very accessible for a lot of people. You can move into speed climbing from other sports and be quite good at it in a short period of time. And I think that just opens up its appeal. It's spectacular to watch. It's so exciting, especially when you're in the stadium watching that stuff.
That's interesting to frame speed climbing is the more democratic form of climbing. Like everybody can do it. It's more accessible. It's like, yeah. Which is interesting because that's actually sort of the opposite in the developed world, where gyms are ubiquitous, but speed walls are relatively rare and hard to find. Certainly regulation height speed walls that are open to the public are very hard to find. So it's kind of interesting because you would never really think of it that way, but you're totally right that if you're in the developing world, it's pretty easy to put up one route on one wall with one top rope. And you're like, okay, that's a pretty low impact facility, like low cost.
Poland, Indonesia, Ukraine, Iran. In the last 15 years, this is where most of the world records have come from. While athletes in the US and Western Europe and Japan have kind of concentrated on pushing difficulty standards, athletes from those countries zeroed in on speed. Geographically, that's starting to change, but that outsider's mindset seems to be very, very much alive in sport.
So once you started climbing in the gym, how did you discover speed climbing?
So I think the earliest form of speed climbing that I did is there's like a route that I would do. It was like a manual belay route that my parents would have to belay me on over and over. And I would try to get my time down to like 30 seconds.
This is Olympian and current world record holder Sam Watson.
And that was like originally one of my goals. But I remember I would just climb at the gym, just a regular, mostly top roping climber. I don't think I bouldered for a while because there's only a top rope gym. Then I joined a youth program called Team Texas here in Dallas, where they focused on competitive climbing. And I competed a bit as a younger child, but I remember when I was 13, during COVID mostly, I really got into speed climbing because it was something that I could do at the gym while there was no competitions or outdoor climbing near me.
Man, are you saying that you started speed climbing as a COVID project? Because most people learned how to bake and like learned how to, plant a garden and things like that. I'm like, are you now the world record holder and something that you got into during COVID?
Yeah. I mean, people have their hobbies. I mean, I had been doing it a bit before, because I had been climbing for so long before. But yeah, basically as a COVID project, yeah, some people bake sourdough, some people learn to knit. I became a world record holder for sure. I actually broke 4.85 as my first world record, and then 4.79 the next run.
And of course, Sam just broke it again at 4.75. Congrats, Sam. The world record's falling pretty regularly now in the last 5 years. What do you think, what do you attribute that to? Is it that the training's gotten better? Is it the coaching's gotten better? Is it the fact that it's more people are doing it because it's in the Olympics? Why do you think that we've seen this sort of progression happen really quickly?
I would attribute, so when you're talking about world records and pushing down, I would give almost all of the credit to individual athletes and their own success and their own open-mindedness to changing things about their speed climbing and their speed climbing training to get better. So both myself, Alexander Miroslav, Federic Leonardo, Karamal Katabin, all of these athletes that have pushed world records in the past several years have been very open to change. And that's what's made them better. Refining training like elite professional athletes, and even just more science, even just things like having a whoop and having a solid nutrition plan and all these things that do contribute to your ability, and new research coming out about what's the best thing, and more people, strength and conditioning coach, track and field coach coming into speed climbing and being invested in those type of people as well have been a major contributing factor to getting these records down. I think we still have a long way to go as far as getting faster. My personal goal is 4.5 by the Olympics, so sub 4.6. But there's definitely way more things that I could be doing if I'm this young, being this successful. It just doesn't make sense for me to be at my peak there, to be at the human peak as well right now. So definitely am very motivated and excited to push it down even more.
Well, dude, so I was just at my first World Cup in Salt Lake where I met you briefly. And one of my takeaways was that, I saw some of the speed warm-up stuff, that just random women wandering into this empty warehouse space and just doing things that, I wasn't totally sure what they were doing, but I was like, there's some elite shit going on. I was like, someone has a plan and they're sticking to their plan. And I've never seen anything quite like it. I was like, this is stuff that I couldn't do. I would just be too embarrassed.
You learn to kind of I guess get, maybe it's an ego thing where it's I'll get these programs that are just these lifts that are just some of the weirdest things. I remember one time I was at the gym with my dad at an Anytime Fitness, and one of the workouts my coach programmed me was a medicine ball toss, where you lead up to throw a medicine ball. And so literally the first attempt, I grab this medicine ball, I do this lead up, and I toss it into the wall, and it just shatters the wall. Massive hole in the wall. And this guy comes up to me and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, hey, sorry. Are you a gym manager?" He's like, "No, I'm just curious. Why would you do that?" And I was like, yeah, I'm an Olympian. I'm a speed climber. Like I trained at the climbing gym, but like this is like it was just closer to my house, and I was just doing it. And I guess you really just can't throw medicine balls at max velocity into a drywall without it breaking.
Dude, and so what happened? You just friggin' shattered their wall?
They never sent me a bill. So I emailed them. And again, Anytime Fitness, if you're listening to this, I am sorry. But I was like with my dad and I just like snuck in because you're supposed to have your own fob, but he was just at the gym. And he was just like, yeah, they'll probably see it on the camera and send you a bill to your account. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have an account. So I feel like, so I emailed them and I said, hey, this is what happened. This is a picture of it. This is what I did. Happy to pay for it. And then they just never responded. So
that's fine. That means you did the right thing and you're good and you just move on.
I think I'm in the clear. I think the statute of limitations is potentially up on that. But if Anytime Fitness, if you're listening, I will gladly pay for your wall for my medicine ball mishap.
That reminds me of I don't know if you've ever been to a speed competition and been into the warm-up area, but the international.
Are they all doing the weirdest stuff?
They're all doing the craziest things.
This is USA Climbing head coach Josh Larson.
It's just people are jumping, flipping, kicking walls, grabbing the railings of the building and doing crazy pull-ups, and it's just and then you go to lead ISO and there's nobody's talking and everyone's just moving slow. It's the different discipline. It's just so funny. Yeah. And it's just a different animal. It really does belong in its own space for the speed climbers.
We'll be back with more after the break. I first found Coros when I was looking for a GPS watch that could track my biggest outdoor adventures. I needed something with a massive battery life that was also robust enough to handle the climbing. As it turns out, Coros is the only GPS watch brand that has done some serious development for climbers, from multi-bitch GPS tracking to indoor programmed workouts. The watches have a mind-blowing battery life. The Vertex watch series lasts for more than 100 hours in GPS activities, so I only need to charge it once every several weeks. I only need to charge my watch so sporadically that I can never find the charger because I haven't used it in 6 weeks. If you're interested in bringing new technology into your climbing training and tracking, you should consider their new Vertex 2S. Go to Coros.com and use the code ClimbingGold to secure a free watch carabiner with the purchase of your new Vertex 2S. The link's in the show notes.
The past few years have kind of been this sort of golden age of men's speed climbing. I think maybe we're just kind of just starting now, the golden age of women's speed climbing. I think you're seeing more of them start to tweak their beta a little bit. I think the times will drop in the women's, and even more so than breaking a world record. The kind of one of the ancillary things that I'm curious to see in the Paris Olympics is not just do we see a new women's world record. Could a woman get 6 flat, or sub 6, 5 point something? That would be pretty darn exciting. I don't think that that's out of the question, and that'd be awesome. That'd be so exciting if somebody goes sub 6.
Earlier this week, the favorite Alexandra Miroslav almost hit that mark, going 6.06 seconds in qualifiers.
No full starts, thank goodness. Emma Hunt is ahead. Alexandra Miroslav slips. Emma Hunt needs to keep it together, and she will be in the Olympics. She does slip, but she's just walked away with it. Emma Hunt with the victory.
Nobody would have.
Just last year, Emma Hunt secured her Olympic bid at the World Qualifiers in Switzerland. It wasn't anywhere close to a world record time, but it was a face-to-face match with 8-time world record holder Miroslav. IFC commentator Matt Grimm witnessed the major upset.
Alexandra Miroslav is the big one for the women, just because before the world champs, and I'm pretty sure on this, she hadn't lost a competition since 2013. She came into the world champs as the obvious favorite. No one can beat her. No one ever can. And she slipped. And it was oh shit, that's just mixed things up hugely. And for her, she slipped, she didn't make it through. And you could see her whole world shatter on screen. And what she did is she went away from that World Championships, and she always used to have this attitude of like, she was very focused. They introduced the athletes, they reintroduced them before the final couple of races. And it's always this moment where you can see how pissed off some of them are having to come back out, because it's like, there's a pause, they get led onto the stage, they wave, they leave, they climb. And she was always like angry almost. She just didn't want to be there. But she changed her whole attitude for the next competition, the European qualifier in Rome. And she was having fun. She came on the stage, she was laughing, and she won the competition. And it was like redemption. So she's the one to beat for the women.
Miroslav, she has this incredible championship pedigree, but her slip in Switzerland proved that she was human. And the race foreshadowed what might be an Olympic rivalry between her and Emma.
What's the current world record for women?
6.24.
And
or 3.
What's your American record right now?
6.30.
And what do you think the theoretical limits are for women?
I got my goals, so I don't know if that's like realistic or theoretical, but I want to say we can at least get 5.5.
That's actually exactly what came to my mind, is like, well, that seems like a pretty attainable, like that seems reasonable. That should be you. Why not you?
Yeah.
Why not you? 5.5.
I'm working on it. Yeah, my big goal is I would, and like this is beyond 5.5 obviously, but I would like to be able to qualify for like a men's World Cup final one day.
What does that take?
5.2, 5.1. Yeah. So quite far. Like just talking about it, like 5.5 to 5.1. That's not that big, but
no, that's far.
Yeah, it's freaking far.
It's kind of crazy because it's like you have this project that you're never going to send. Like like for most climbers, like they're like, oh, there's my proj or whatever. And you succeed on it, but you're never finished with it. Like, does that like equate to you? Like, do you think of this as like a project the same way where you're like, no, it's not done yet. It's not perfect yet.
Yes and no. It's like, for me, I'm already thinking about like, okay, like what's next? Like when I hit 7 seconds, I was like, okay, how do we get to 6 seconds? And then when I hit 6 seconds, I was like, okay, how do we get to 5? And so for me, there's always been something else to grow to, but I don't know for like Sam, like how big his are. Like I can be like, oh, I'm 6'4", 6'3". Like I have a good amount of time to shave off, but he can be like 4'7", I want to hit 4'6". Like, so it varies.
But he can set a life goal of going sub 4, and you're like, well, that's something to work on for the next decade.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So yeah, it's like life goals, but I guess maybe my life goal is then right now the working to make a men's World Cup final.
I wanted to ask if a PR performance on the speed wall feels like red pointing or sort of sending outdoors. And I suppose you've probably done enough hard boulders that you've tapped into that feeling of perfect execution.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, is that what elite level speed climbing feels like when it goes well?
Yeah, it is.
Because, I mean, I suppose that's kind of the feeling that all climbers are chasing when they're trying to send their proj in whatever discipline. And I mean, that's certainly a big part of what makes soloing so appealing, is like, oh, you're just in this like perfect mode for as long as possible. And I'm like, oh, I mean, I can see the appeal if that's what you get to tap into when you speed climb well.
Yeah. And then like with bouldering projects outside, like you can try like a move like so many times and it just feels so hard. And then sometimes like when you send it, you're just like, why was I having trouble with that? Like that was so easy.
Yeah, it's funny. Yet that feeling is so fleeting and so rare. It's like the occasional day and you're like, why can't every day be like this? And you're like, God
exactly.
damn it.
So I think like speed climbers are chasing that like a lot. And like we're chasing the time a lot because you just like, the feeling. And like I could do a lap without like the timer and I could tell you like, oh, that was a 6-7. Mm-hmm. Like you just are so in tuned with the time and the wall and like the feeling that you can just be like, this effort is this time. And then when you have no effort, you're just like, holy shit, like that was awesome. Why can't every lap be like that? For me, the goal is no thinking. Like I always say, like I want to climb as dumb as possible as I can. Like I just want all the muscle memory to take over. And I think when slips and mistakes happen, it's because like for me, I am thinking. Like, because I'll be in the top section, I'll be like, oh, wow, that start was great. Or, oh my gosh, I like almost blew it right there. And so I'm not in the present moment. And that's when mistakes happen.
It's almost like you black out for like 6.5 seconds. You're like, wait, where am I?
Yeah, some of my best laps, like I can't tell you like what was great about them. Like it's just like blackout and it was like effortless. And I can't tell you like, oh, like I pushed more right there. Like I would have to go watch the video.
Do you do any specific mental training to help you tap into that state?
Yeah, a lot of mental practice, and there's not like a specific one for that. I think it's just trying to do it as much as possible so it becomes like habit. But there are times like that you just have to think about the beta. Like if it's a day where I'm like working on like, oh gosh, I need to pull more on this move, I like set up like cue points. Like push here, pull here, and then like that's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, that's interesting that for performance, you want to think about nothing, but then for practice, you probably always want to be thinking about one specific element that you're practicing. You know, otherwise it's just not really practice.
Yeah.
So every practice burn, you're sort of intentionally like, I will push harder on my foot here, or like I will stay in a straighter line here, or whatever. Is that the idea when you're training? You always have something that you're practicing?
Exactly. But every comp is different, so I'm going to like think of it different. I always have like kind of one phrase or mantra at a comp, and it changes like comp to comp. It's just like going with how I feel that day. Your
mantra should be, I woke up today, might as well be badass.
Yeah, I do a lot of Ricky Bobby, like Talladega Nights. That's my favorite movie.
Is that?
Yeah, if you ain't first, you're last. Trying to remind myself like, oh, I do this all the time. It's like 1, 2, cha-cha-cha, 3, 4, cha-cha-cha. Like it's just habit. So I don't know. It just depends on the day. Some days I like wake up feeling kind of badass, and other days I'm like, okay, just take it one step at a time.
Yeah, the crux is when you have to compete on the days where you don't feel badass, then you just have to drop the hammer anyway and just perform, which obviously happens.
Those days are kind of good though, because you have no expectations and you can just like float on by.
Yeah.
But like the days that you wake up feeling badass and then you weren't badass, you're like really disappointed.
While Emma's looking to make a statement on the world stage, her teammate, Piper Kelly, is going to the Olympics with a perspective that few other athletes have. She's the most seasoned speed climber on the ticket, 7 years senior to the youngest on the team, Sam Watson. It's her first and realistically her only shot at the Olympics. A culmination of more than a decade of work, something she stayed with through growing up, high school, and college. Piper qualified for the Olympics, the Pan American Games in Santiago, Chile last year, grabbing the last woman's spot behind Emma.
It was the final race that determined who was going, but for women, because Emma had already qualified and still decided to go to the event, it was the race before. But I don't think like the crowd or like the commentators or anybody knew that. So in the race before is when I actually qualified for the Olympics. So I'm like coming down, like, I don't know, like having a heart attack, or like I like couldn't breathe. I was like freaking out, like trying, but the commentators and the officials, like, I don't think they knew, because it was supposed to be the next race that is what qualified for the Olympics. So they're trying to get me to go like back in line, like, come on, because I had to do another race. They're like, you gotta get back in line, like, come on. And I was like, wait a second. I was like, what is happening? Like, I like can't breathe right now. Like, give me a second. So I was honestly, when I was going out to that race, I was still just like trying not like to cry and like to like is this really happening? That was kind of what was going through my head more than anything, because I just qualified like probably almost exactly 5 minutes before walking out for that final race with Emma.
How long have you been climbing?
I've probably been climbing for about 17, 18 years, and then speed climbing for maybe 12 or 13. So since I was real small.
How old are you?
24.
Yeah. It feels like standards in speed climbing have been changing really quickly. What does it feel like to be part of a sport that's progressing so quickly?
It's crazy. It feels like I always like make the jump and then it's just like a little bit too late. You know, I get to a certain level and like, oh, okay, nice. Like now I'll make all the finals this year. And then all of a sudden it's like half a second faster to make the finals. And I'm like, dang, I was a season too late, which is a little frustrating, but also exciting. I think we looked at some data of kind of World Cup cutoff times, and like the slowest increase was from like 2022 to 2023 was an 11% increase. That was like the smallest difference between any of the World Cup times. So 2 years ago, a 7-second time would have made you into pretty much every single World Cup. And then last year it was 7.4 or 7.3, so lowered by like more than half a second. And then this year it's been a little similar cutoff time, like that 7.2, 7.3, but we see a lot more women getting into that 6-second. Whereas last year maybe only there was 3 or 4 women's in 6-second times, but this year it's like 8, 9, 10 of the women are in the 6-second time. So yeah, it can be frustrating, but it's also always have something to improve on. And there's always somebody you can look at. It's like, okay, well, they did it, they went from this to this in this amount of time. So it's like, I know I can do it too.
In a lot of ways, speed climbing is the coolest. And yet it's also pretty hard to find sponsorship opportunities to support yourself. You have a GoFundMe to help you get to the Olympics. Do you see a path in professional climbing beyond the Olympics? Just talk about the tension there.
Yeah, it can be hard. I mean, as a climber in general, but especially as a speed climber, to sort of make a living just doing that. So I'm hoping that, like you said, that speed climbing has a lot of success at the Olympics and, brings in some viewership and can bring in some money that way. I think it is the most kind of easy to understand and visually exciting, especially to someone who's not familiar with rock climbing. So maybe has the most potential there for viewing outside of just the climbing community. So I would like to be able to continue being a professional climber after the Olympics. I think unrealistic to expect to just not have to work at all, at least right away after the Olympics. So I currently work as a coach, both in person here in Salt Lake and as an online coach with some teams from where I used to live, as well as a few private athletes and speed coaching. So I expect to continue having to do that, but I also love doing that. I love coaching. And like I said, that's something I want to do after I'm done being an athlete, is sort of give back to the community in that way. So that's something I would want to do anyway. So I'll continue doing that. But yeah, hopefully, a lot can ride on how I do in Paris. And, there's some money associated with, actually winning a medal or placing a certain place. But a bigger thing would be the potential for bringing in more kind of sponsorship and stuff like that. So again, I try not to think about that, I guess, too much, especially, at the event. Is one thing you don't want to have is okay, I need to win this race so that, I can win this money. Or it's not the best headspace to be in. So yeah, I guess try not to worry about it too much now, but it definitely will be something I'll have to think about after the games.
Talking with the speed athletes, there is the general hope that speed climbing gets its moment, that it gets brought into prime time, and maybe it gets a little easier for those who have given so much energy to the fringe side of something that's already pretty niche. Many of the combined boulder and lead athletes, they lead lives of professionalism outside of the Olympics. And while a gold medal would certainly be awesome for someone like Adam Ondra, it wouldn't make or break his career financially or from a legacy standpoint. It has the potential to be life-changing, though, for Emma or Sam. For Piper, those ambitions came to a close on the first day of climbing in Paris, when she faced off against Indonesian climber Desek Made Rite Kusuma Dewi. Dewi turned in the third fastest time, advancing past Piper. Again, here's Matt Groom.
So I'm a massive fan of speed climbing. I have been from the moment I really started commentating. I knew about it before I started commentating, but I didn't necessarily get it. But the athletes themselves, it's mind-blowing the kind of training they do. And also that they fly halfway around the world to do a competition and they could full start the qualifying round and that is it. And I don't get that. I don't get that at all. I don't understand how they deal with the pressure of that one. But I love the fact that speed climbing is kind of geeky. It's like they're squeezing tenths, thousands of a second out of something. Whereas in climbing, often you get lead routes where people fall off in the first half of it. And yet speed climbing, they're like, you could do the route. Now, how good can you do that? And I love that aspect of taking something that's like a physical, there's like like the 100 meters, there's a barrier there. And it's like, okay, what can you do? What can you humanly do? And I don't think we see that in boulder and lead because there's so many factors that come in. Whereas speed is kind of pure. It's like, here's the wall, here's the route, you know what to do. The conditions hopefully are going to be okay. Go do it.
I think in so many different passions and so many different pursuits, and certainly it's true of our generation in climbing. I mean, there was a little bit of money or whatever, but it wasn't, there was nothing guaranteed in your career as like whether you'd be professional when you started and like poured your heart into it, right? It was just sort of this thing that on a level was kind of weird and you cared about it a lot. And every sort of pursuit needs people that aren't in it for the money, aren't in it for the fame, that just like love the thing. And like that's true of Hans, and just how into it he was in terms of the nose and also just the competition side of it. And it's true for like Piper Kelly, who's having to like use a GoFundMe. There's probably no Wheaties. I mean, maybe Sam gets a Wheaties box, right? But like,
I hope Sam gets a Wheaties box.
Yeah. But the reality is like, there's just something so authentic about these speed climbers because it's not about sponsorship. It's just about this love of speed.
Yeah, no, that I think is fair. The embodiment of amateurism. Is that even a word? But yeah, it's interesting because you think of climbing as already being a niche sport, and then speed climbing is the niche within the niche. Because it's like, the thing is that everyone who qualified for lead climbing and bouldering is basically already a professional climber, and they're already climbing the hardest routes in the world, and you're sort of like, oh, they're all probably making a living. But the speed climbers, on the other hand, I mean, I guess some of them are probably well sponsored and things, but a lot of them are just really not. And outside of speed climbing, I was like, yeah, what else? I don't know. I mean, they're definitely not going to be professionals. It's like full amateur.
Yeah. Do you admire that in a way?
Why? I admire the passion that leads somebody to get that good at something. And that's true sort of across the Olympics, is that when you see people in sort of niche sports where you're like, well, there's no way they make a living doing this. So it's like, they have some other career, but they're also training for hours and hours a day and like pursuing this seemingly crazy thing. You're just like, oh, it's cool. I think it's always nice to see anyone who's really psyched on what they do.
Yeah.
And with speed climbing and with some of these other sports, it's like, you just can't get that good unless you're really into it.
By the time you hear this, the long journey to find out who the fastest in the world will have come to a conclusion. For now, because that journey never really stops. Right now, some kid in Jakarta or Warsaw or Dallas will have witnessed something incredible in Paris that spoke to them in a way that another sport might not. At some point, they will find their way into a gym and stand beneath the 15-meter wall dotted with the unique bulbous speed holds designed 20 years earlier as a creative lark by a Frenchman who never thought his vision would be anything more than a sideshow or a stepping stone. That kid will get to work, following an innate curiosity. Can I go faster? How do I get faster? At first, they'll climb the route like any other 5'10" gym route, and then slowly they will begin to follow the path, the ethos of all who seek to find growth in climbing. Do more with less. Addition via subtraction. Beauty through reduction. And if they work hard enough, they possess the right innate talents and just enough luck smiles on them, they will get to follow that very human curiosity of who is best, who is fastest, from a local gym racing against friends, to a national setting, to the great cities of their continent, all the way to a future Olympics. Thanks, Piper, Sam, and Emma for sharing your story. And guess what? I know what happens. And besides saying that Sam Watson wouldn't be done breaking world records at the time of this publication, I'm not going to tell you who won, because you should go find it somewhere on YouTube and give it a watch. And think about how many goes, how much shared human passion and intellect went into refining that upward beta and went into those times. They deserve the watch. Climbing Gold is a production of Duct Taped NPR. Alex Honnold is our host. Our production and editing team includes the talents of Lauren Delani Miller, Marco Seiler Gonzalez, and Evan Phillips. Skylar Perwins is our YouTube and social media editor. Music today by Brendan O'Connell, Fruity, Golden Finch, Dead Red, Joya, Firesticks, Bell, Joey Cantor, Garland, and Jono Hill. Tracks are courtesy of the artist or Track Club. Our creative director is me, Fitz Cahal. Our executive producers are Jonathan Redsick and Ben Endy for RXR Sports, and Lacey Hendricks and Becca Call for Duct Taped NPR. Thanks for listening.